Hi, this is part of my ongoing series of videos that show how to clean the controls of NuTone remote intercom stations. This is a model ISA45. This is a 5-inch inside speaker, and this is used with intercom system models IM and IMA406. It's important to note that the IM and IMA406 was the first NuTone intercom system that had what was later called hands-free reply from every station. So on the remote speakers, you have 4 intercom buttons. You have inside and patio talk and listen, and you have door speaker talk and listen. This allowed the user to call to anyone by using the talk button in any part of the house and ask them a question. And then by using the listen button, they could hear the reply, and the visitor or the person in the other room didn't have to go directly to the speaker and didn't operate the controls. They could just answer back, and the person that initiated the call could hear the reply. So that's where hands-free reply came from. Same is true from the door speaker. No more talk buttons on outdoor speakers at that point. So again, talk to answer the front door and ask who's there, and listen to hear the reply. Of course, you have a volume control which allows you to adjust the volume of primarily the music that comes out of the station. These speakers were used on systems starting around 1975 and were in production until the end of 1985. The oldest of these speakers would be 40 years old now, and the newest ones would be 30 years old. And it's not uncommon when you go to someone's home to find that the push button switches are so dirty and so corroded that many times you can't really operate them. Sometimes if you can manage to get one pushed down, there's so much buildup inside the switches that the ring won't be able to overcome it, and it won't pop back up to the at-rest position. The volume controls, of course, they get dirty and staticky, and it interferes with how this station operates. So I'm going to show you how to clean the controls and the switches in one of these stations. If we turn it over, what we'll see is on the back of the speaker you have a 5-inch diameter speaker cone. It's attached to the switchboard down here by these 2 red wires. These are soldered on to the speaker terminal, so the board's going to stay permanently attached to the speaker cone. And here are the 4 switches. These are the little blue ends of the tops of the switches. There's 4 of them. And the buttons that you see on the front, the black buttons, you can just see how they have 2 little ears that snap around the blue posts of the switch, and that's how they're connected together. So let me zoom in on this and I'll show you up close. So here you can see better the blue posts of the switches, and these are the little ears from the push buttons on the front of the speaker that connect the button to the switch. So when I push the button down, you can see the blue peg move up and down with the button. So to clean these properly, this is one of the more elaborate ones to clean because you can't really get to the switches very well while the switchboard is mounted in the speaker grill. You really have to take this out to do this properly. So what you'll find, and the reason I left these wires on here, is to give you an idea of what it's going to look like when you take this off your wall. 406s are a 6-wire system. That's what the 6 in the model number indicates, that it's a 6-wire system. And we have standard NuTone 6 conductor wire. This is IW6. If you look on the switchboard, you'll see that they're labeled. In fact, let's dust that off a little bit here. This is a good tip for people. This is a nice bristle brush, and it works really well for dusting off circuit boards and things like that. There's lots of different kinds you can get. This is simply, I bought this at a baking store, and it's some kind of pastry brush or something. It was inexpensive. It's a nice size. I think it's it's a pastry brush made by Atco. So anyway, you can pick one of these up for $5 or $6. It does a really good job of dusting off switchboards. So here you can see on the switchboard itself, the wire color that corresponds with the screw terminal is labeled. We have red, red, white, orange, black, white, and black. those correspond with the color coding on the insulation of your wires. So if you'll have to remove the wires to take the switchboard out, it's pretty easy to put them back. Now, if for some reason your system was wired with wire other than NuTone wire, let's say perhaps you have more generic wire for some reason, and your color coding could be red and black and blue and yellow and green and orange, which doesn't match up with the color coding on the switchboard, you can simply write down which color wire went under which screw. Or another good way to do it is take your camera phone, take a couple pictures of it before you disconnect it, and that way it'll be easy to refer back to when it's time to hook it back up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the wires and we're going to remove the switchboard. Now that we've taken all the screws out, the switchboard is just sort of floating inside the grill assembly. The only thing that's really holding it in place at this point is the volume control knob on the front of the grill. The easiest way to do this is you simply pull it up and it'll pull the volume control knob off the volume control stem, and now you can turn the board over and see the switches. Here are the intercom buttons off the front of the grill, and you can see how they have the two little ears that fit around the blue stems of the switch. So you've got 4 of the buttons and you've got 1 volume control. You might be able to see how these get really dirty over time. Wipe some of it away. So while you're doing this, this is also a good time to clean these if you want your speaker to look better than it did before you started. The way I clean them is I use a little spray citrus-based cleaner and just spray them, soak them a little bit for a few minutes, and then rinse them off. If they're really grimy, you can go at them with a toothbrush and they'll clean up really nicely, improve the look of your speaker. So we'll put those off to the side. So here's the switchboard assembly on the front of it. And what you can see that you have here are, you have the 4 intercom switches here and the volume control. The volume control is just like most NuTone volume controls. There's a little port in the body of the volume control here, and that's where we're going to spray the cleaner in first. We're going to use our Deoxit D5, which we use on most stations. And all you have to do is spray a little bit into the control and rotate it back and forth by hand. What I like to do is start with it, say, fully counterclockwise, spray a little bit in the hole, rotate it back and forth a few times, turn it fully clockwise, and spray a little bit more in the hole. And that will evenly distribute it throughout the volume control pot, and the rotating of the knob helps distribute it, and it allows the wiper contact that's connected to the shaft to work itself back and forth across the windings and clean away some of the oxidation. The intercom switch assemblies are spring-loaded plunger style switches, and you can see the spring right here. So when we push these down, it compresses the spring, and when we release it, the spring is supposed to make it pop back up to the at-rest position. When these type of switches get really dirty, when you push it down, they may very slowly return to the at-rest position, or they may get stuck and stop because the dirtiness of the internal parts of the switch, the spring won't be able to overcome it. So there's 2 ways to clean these. Some of these switches, what you'll find on the bottom, it'll be like these, and they're actually open on the bottom. And sometimes you'll find these where there's a white colored plastic cap that snaps on over the bottom of the switch. I think those were added to help keep dirt out of the switch. If you have the ones with the white caps, you can use a small screwdriver and just pop them off. They're not glued in place or anything like that. They're just pressed on. So the first step you want to do is spray a little bit of cleaner into the holes in the bottom of the switch, and it'll slowly make its way down through the inside of the switch, and then operate the switch several times to help distribute the cleaner throughout the switch. These switches are quite long, and the contacts inside the switch are on the plunger assembly, which is the extension of the blue stem. It goes down through the center of the body of the switch, and the contacts are on the sides of the plunger. So we want the cleaner to make its way all the way down the length of the switch, and sometimes you have to spray them a couple of times because the cleaner has to make it all the way down through the switch. So there's no rushing a job like this. You simply have to work at it. One of the disadvantages of this type of station when you clean the switches is you can't really do this while the system is on and playing, so it's harder to tell how effective the cleaning is going. You really won't know till you hook it back up. The other thing you can do, especially if your switches are very dirty and they are sticky and don't want to return to the at-rest position, is you can spray through the top of the switch. If you look here inside just beyond the spring, you'll see that there's an opening where the blue plunger goes down into the center of the switch, and if you're careful, you can spray a little cleaner into the gap between the plunger and the body of the switch, and you really have to do both sides because there are two sides to the plunger, and you want to get cleaner down on both sides, and that way you're getting cleaner into the switch from both the top and the bottom. And then again, work the switches. Generally, once you spray each end at least once, you should feel a great improvement in the action of the switch when you push it. If you want a little more longevity to your cleaning, you can follow up the D5 with a little bit of deoxit F5. F5 is also a cleaner, but it also has a little bit of lubricant in it, and while not specifically designed for these type of switches, we find in real service calls that this will make it last longer. It's also very good for the volume controls and will improve and last longer than the D5 on its own. So once you have this all done, one consideration is always have a rag with you when you go throughout your house, because there's going to be a certain amount of spillage, and you don't want to get spray all over your carpets or your floors, so having a rag with you to clean away the excess is always a good idea. Now comes kind of the tricky part. So we've cleaned our switches, and we're going to turn this back over and sit it back in place where it's going to go. And to make this a little easier to show you, I'm going to put 2 screws back in, just to hold the switchboard in place. And with the switchboard back in place, now we have to reinstall our recently cleaned push button knobs, and these are a little tricky to do. The trick is you have to, when you put these back in, you have to get the ears here on the button back around the blue shaft of the switch, and to do that you insert it from the front at a slight angle, and you actually have to see if you can see that. So we're installing it on this switch right here. That's the first one. And to make them line up, you have to push the switch down with your finger, which is hard to see on the video because my finger is big and it's in the way. Then you insert the knob and snap it around the shaft. And I know that was hard to see, but when you go to do it on your own speaker, it will become more obvious. Again, pushing it down. We're doing the second one now. So you push it down with your finger, put the knob back through the front, line it up, push it in, and it snaps around it. It's like a collar that goes around the blue tab. So I'll do the last two. And you can actually do it from the front because, see if you can see that. So here's the opening for the button, and you can actually see the switch through the hole in the grill right here. And if it's pretty well lit, you can see the blue stem. So you take the button like this, and you put the ears around the switch, push it in, let it go, and now it's back in place. So these are all back in. The last thing we have to do is put the volume control knob back on. And of course, when we do this, most volume control knobs will have an indicator or a dot or a line on the end of the knob, so it corresponds with the markings on the grill. So you want that to line up properly. So what you do is you turn this all the way up, which would be fully clockwise, and then you line the dot up with the last indicator on the grill and push it on. That way the dot, the indicator, matches the maximum mark on the grill. Now your speaker is done, except you have to go back, put the last of the screws back in, and now with the screws temporarily in place, we have to reconnect the wires, which I'm going to do next. And here we have our wires reattached. They're back in their original positions. So the color of the wire corresponds with the color code on the circuit board. All 6 screws have been put back in place, and now you have a cleaned ISA45 speaker. You have clean switches. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it helpful and it will be useful to you. If you did, please like it on our YouTube channel. The like button is down there at the bottom of the page. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can leave comments or questions, and I'll answer them for you. So that's all for today. Hope you liked the video. See you on the next one.